Welcome to Manhwa Recaps, spoilers ahead, watch out, and take care. Huge shout out, and a special thanks to my Patreon and channel members. The series starts with us being told that humanity finally attained victory over the 6 great demon gods who sought to destroy the world, and even over the perishing sea god. But by this point it didn't matter. Most of the earth has already been swallowed by the perishing sea created by that bastard, and humanity will soon perish itself. A man starts to laugh, and says that he can't believe this is how it turns out. Even though they won, everything is already destroyed, and regardless of the surviving heroes, even the Tower of Heroes that sustains the earth has crumbled. The dude says he can't believe the perishing sea is not disappearing even after they finally killed that bastard. Someone else tells him that he's making a scene all by himself, and anyone watching would think that he did everything alone. He is the mad dog named Yum Sung Ha. The explosive dog says that he was the one lying down faking sick, now he's trying to act tough. Her name is Louise Valance. The ice dog named Amir Singh says that he told them before that he was just trying to get a free ride after taking charge of the Legion. And finally the last blacksmith Lee Se-hoon tells them to cut the bullshit, as they would have died ages ago if it wasn't for the gear that he made for them all. They all seem surprised, telling him that is a crazy take, and he says that if they don't like it to give his gear back, and he explains that these people are often called the Three Dogs. They didn't stand with humanity nor with the side of pandemonium. They all acted however they pleased, interested only in what benefited them. They were just typical fence sitters. Even though they were selfish bastards, they survived until the end, and ultimately performed the greatest feats. If these guys had just lent their strength a little sooner, he doesn't know if things would have turned out like this. As the sea continues coming in, Se-hoon stares at it, and asks if there's anybody who's gonna live this. Sung Ha says that his insides are all fucked up, and he's cooked. Louise says it's the same, and it might be a curse, but she can't stop bleeding. Amir says that his heart was pierced, so he's no good either. Se-hoon sighs, saying that they should have just helped from the start. Instead they ignored it all to look out for themselves. But it turns out that's all they could muster as Amir falls over face first. Se-hoon turns surprised only to see that all 3 of them have already succumbed to their wounds. Se-hoon sighs, saying that they're all high maintenance until the very end. We see him grabbing onto a hammer a little later as he's repairing their weapons. He continues this over and over until eventually the hammering stops, and he makes sure that all other weapons are right beside their bodies, saying that he should at least use it to mark a grave for them. He then turns back around staring at the giant tsunami, and wonders if it's his turn now. He says this is the last time that he'll do this too. He raises his hand, and puts it to his chest, and pulls it away as the system tells us he is extracting a bond from himself. It also shows the level, but we see it's actually blanked out. As he holds a crystal in his hand which serves as the bond between him and whatever he's about to imbue it in due to his skill, which is a unique one called Extract Bond. It can extract special or from a bonded target, and the effects vary based on the bond with the target, and their potential. If he uses it on himself, something worse than common iron ore comes out. It's a colorless ore, and he says it would have been better if he had awakened this sooner. If nothing is contained in it, then he'll fill it with the regret that torments him. He raises the hammer into the air, and starts wailing away, and he doesn't know if what he's hearing now is the sound of the perishing sea or the sound of waves he's always heard. One thing is certain, however, whenever this sound rang in his ears, it was always an item beyond his imagination that was created. As the final strike is delivered, he holds it up, saying that he wonders if there's really no special ability even until the very end. He thought something good would come out even if it was just his own bondstone, but this thing is plain as fuck. As he is looking at it, he says rather than dying in those waves, he'd rather end his life with his own hands as he stabs himself in the throat. As the waves finally start to consume him, he actually looks a bit peaceful, saying he's a crazy bastard too. To think that all he did until the very end was hammering, and it was only as soon as he discarded the sword that he finally realized about the sound of waves he'd often heard since he first awakened his power, and he wondered what it was all this time, but it was the perishing sea itself. And only if he had realized that sooner, maybe he could have persuaded the 3 dogs, but maybe even then if he had hammered for the sake of others earlier, more things might have changed. The status window begins spamming him with notifications about an image manifesting, and we see that it's actually the skill Return to Origin. Slowly he starts to hear a voice, and he wonders if he really didn't die. He sees a man staring at him asking what he's doing, but he's referring to him as candidate. Se-hoon is confused, since he hasn't heard that in over 30 years, and the dude asks what he's doing zoning out at the entrance exam. Se-hoon says that if this is the entrance exam, it means that this must be Babel, and his life could be flashing before his eyes, but he does recall the imagery manifestation saying Return to Origin, and he wonders if he really regressed from the weapon made by his bond stone. The man warns him for the final time, saying that if he doesn't do it properly he'll kick him out. Se-hoon says sure, but reaches towards the hammer, saying regression sure is an interesting thing to happen, but if he realizes his given abilities early, and swings his hammer sooner like he said before he died, he wonders if he can change the situation, but right now he just needs to give it a shot, and sees the opportunity that he's been given, and he smiles thinking that this time he's going to make sure to protect it all. He says this time he'll pass the Babel exam, and then meet the 3 dogs, which will be the beginning. As he starts hammering away, an older man in the room instinctively hears it, and turns. He's surprised, and walks over saying that this candidate is astonishing. It looks slow, but it's perfectly rhythmic, they clear pure resonance. And this is a top-tier forging skill. The dude from earlier who was bitching at him walks over, and Se-hoon's looking at his blade. But so is the instructor, and he can't believe he made that. They've realized that an incredible candidate has appeared, and if he'd just submitted as is, he'd pass immediately. Se-hoon though shatters the blade into pieces, leaving the 2 of them confused as hell, wondering what he's doing. Se-hoon sighs, saying that he still has a long way to go. Showing this kind of trash is something he cannot tolerate as a blacksmith. The dude walks over asking if he'd just shred a weapon in front of the professor, and if he thinks this is a joke. Se-hoon says that he would like to remake the assignment. The dude tells him to look here, and we finally learn that he's an assistant named Han. The professor tells Han to go bring him the remaining materials as he didn't really break any rules. Or if he's trying to make him go get the materials himself. Han gets scared, and runs off saying he'll go bring them immediately, and the professor calls out to Se-hoon saying that there's only 40 minutes left in the exam. Se-hoon says he knows, and the professor asks if he thinks breaking that weapon was the right decision. Se-hoon looks down at it saying that he can't submit something like that. The professor looks very interested, telling him to do his best. After getting the materials we see Se-hoon staring down at the flames saying that with this body perfect forging is difficult. His mana, strength and even time is running short. And that means the best option in this situation is only one thing. As the fire starts to change sounds, the other examiners turn wondering what's going on, and they ask if he's really infusing mana into the ignition stones. If those catch fire it will explode, but he throws them in. They all start to call him crazy as a very colorful fire starts to fly out from the furnace. They begin panicking. Even Han is telling the professor to get him to stop already, but the professor says to let him be. While the candidates can be freaking out, he can't let Han do that. He needs to observe the flames closely. Han is just confused, but Se-hoon explains that this is called the 5-color fire demon. Its high temperature flame is enhanced by the resonance of 5 types of ignition stones. It requires precise mana control, but is an excellent technique that can be used even with minimal mana. The other candidates are confused, asking if it really didn't explode, but then they realize that the color of the iron ingot has changed. The professor says that this is what he was aiming for. He resonated the ignition stones to enhance the firepower, and modified the properties of the ingot. This will significantly shorten the time needed for forging, however with 30 minutes left the time is still tight. His forging earlier was excellent too, but if that's all he is then he's cooked, because there's no way he'd make it in time. As he raises his hammer he swings down, and the first strike hits the ingot, and Se-hoon looks happy with it. He then continues his forging process. After flattening it down he reheats it once more, and continues whacking away over and over until even his hands begin to get bloody. He says that he's run out of mana, and the protection gave out, and he needs to start training as soon as this exam is over because his body is weak. But still, as he tightens the grip on his hammer he says he won't waste a single second, and he continues going to town on it, telling himself to push the body to its limits. There's now only 10 minutes left, and he's still sweating away. 3 minutes he's sharpening the blade, and with 1 minute left he's looking it down until the professor tells him to stop. Se-hoon's panting, and clearly his body's worn out from this, but he's completed it. The status window says the armament 5-color fireblade has been completed, and he has acquired the skill Artisan of Flame, which is C rank. The judgment of the fireblade is actually high. So the grade has been labeled as such, and we see the quality is called mid to high too, as it's a full item now. Other candidates are speechless, and Se-hoon tells them that he would appreciate if they checked the detailed description in the status window. The assistant starts screaming, telling him that he passes, and the professor squeezes his lips, telling him to shut the hell up. We finally learn the professor is named Kim In-chul. And now that Se-hoon is in his office he says that he has a question, asking if the sword was worthy of his submission this time. Se-hoon stares at him, then says that for now it is. The professor smiles, saying that he looks like he's still not satisfied, and that he'll speak frankly. This place will not satisfy his standards, so it would be better for him to withdraw his application. While Babel's reputation is overwhelming, the refining department hasn't been producing any good results. Se-hoon of course already knew this fact. As the refining department will shut down in 8 years due to declining standards, and the future of the Vulcan Academy will become the best institution for blacksmiths. The professor himself goes to say that Vulcan is a better option. Se-hoon tells him that he's wrong though, because the best will not be Vulcan, but wherever he's enrolling, which will be here at Babel. In-chul looks surprised, but smiles, saying in that case he'll need to become the department valedictorian first, and he asked if he's confident. Se-hoon says of course, at least on the student level there won't be anyone better than him. In-chul asks if he knows the process for selecting the valedictorate here at Babel. Se-hoon says they only select one candidate through an additional exam between the top 2 students of the department. From those candidates the department valedictorian is chosen. We learned also that the Babel Academy divides its cadets broadly into 3 departments: Combat Department, Support Department, and the Technology Department. Within each department dozens of majors are intertwined like roots, and being the department valedictorian means you have received the most outstanding evaluation among those countless majors, and you are acknowledged as a top-tier talent by all of Babel. In-chul tenses up a bit, and says he'll tell him once more, not as a professor, but as a senior blacksmith. Even if he becomes the valedictorian, it is hard to expect success as a blacksmith here, and he needs to go to Vulcan Academy as that is the path for him. Se-hoon says putting a junior's future before his own position means he's a decent man, but says the environment does not matter because he just told him that. As since he is enrolling here, Babel will soon become the best. In-chul smiles, saying that that is a statement that goes beyond arrogance, but for some reason he doesn't hate it, and he says that he's really looking forward to working together. They shake hands with one another, and Se-hoon says he's looking forward to it too, but we see now that the status window says that a bond has been formed with In-chul. It is level 1, and he is extracting it. What he pulls out is a fragment of iron that looks like wood. It is called the flame-bearing iron. The grade is high, and is a metal possessing a flame. It has wood-like properties, and can store fire internally. Later that night back at his house, Se-hoon is staring down at it, saying that it's not bad, but to think it's only this size, and he explains that bond extraction quantifies the relationship with a specific target to draw out non-existent ores. The problem is that the bond level is low, making it difficult to utilize as of now. Also, compared to Babel freshmen, his start stats are at miserable levels. While it's regrettable in many ways considering it's the price for returning to the past, it's quite cheap, and he tells himself that not being patient as wanting more than this is simply greed, as there will be plenty of time to crush the pandemonium bastards. He explains that pandemonium are monsters that threaten not just humanity, but the entire planet. The fact that the 6 great demon gods caused the destruction of humanity was also entirely their plan, and he can't be picky about the means and methods if he wants to stop them. He can't afford to get confused about important future events, so he needs to obtain memory-related armaments or skills first. But now the first step of enrolling into Babel is resolved, but before he can say what he has to do next, he's surprised by what he sees as his bond has reached level 1, and he unlocked the skilled bond imprint. It jumps to a whole week later at the academy, and Se-hoon says that he's lost again. He doesn't know if this is the right place. He heads into refining room 3, and as he says good morning, a man calls out to him in a stern voice. In-keel's also in the room, but the dude says that he looks quite relaxed, but surely he can see that he's made everybody wait. This is the vice dean of the department, and his name is Michael Barmett. In-chul tells him there's still 10 minutes before the exam begins. Michael says that it's not a matter of time, but attitude, and he'll give him a warning about that. Se-hoon says it's not just the refining department being in a bad state, but he guesses that this is also the higher-ups being frustrated with In-chul, and now he understands why he recommended a different academy. Se-hoon looks over at the other cadet who glares at him, and begins to look him up and down, and when Se-hoon goes to greet him, that he turns his head. Se-hoon is just confused, wondering what's wrong with this guy, and then we hear a woman asking if everybody's already gathered. Se-hoon and the rest turn, and Michael says that he was wondering when she would arrive. Turns out this is the dean, and Se-hoon is surprised as she sits down in front of him. He says that she's sorry for her tardiness, and we learn that her name is Ryu Yun-ha. Se-hoon is freaking the fuck out, wondering what she's doing here. We learn that she was an S-rank hero named the Weapon Eater. She was a hero possessing the unique skill that amplifies her power by devouring armaments, and before his regression she was just a regular customer of his for a long time. But she had a pretty bitter ending, as we see her a lot older leaning against a wall saying that she regrets eating his armament. He looks a little regretful about it too, as his face is pained in reality, but In-chul gets him to snap out of it by calling his name over and over, and he tells him that he's going to explain the exam, so he needs to pay attention. During these 90 minutes they must both create an armament that can be paired with the sword from the previous exam. However, They can only use alchemy smithing to craft it. As for the materials, they can use any of the ores present here. The created armaments will be judged by the dean and vice dean. They need to make something that they're proud of. Then Inchul tells them to start, and we see his opponent looking confident. He says that alchemy smithing is interesting, and he has to create a resonance using only pure mana so that the elemental mana doesn't go berserk. His opponent then asks if staring at the materials increases his mana or something, and Sehun's confused, and he looks over at him asking if he's talking to him. The dude asks if there's anyone else around, and we learn that this dude's name is Hans Barmit, and Inchul says that he should refrain from making comments unrelated to the exam. Hans says that he'll be careful, and then Sehun picks up on the fact that his last name is the exact same as the vice dean's. He says that it's no wonder they actually look alike. The more he thinks about it, the funnier it is. But Hans thinks that with this he's now finally understood that he's better than he is because he's the vice dean's son, and he's just a commoner with the lowest family background, and lowest mana among the entrants. He was born into a renowned house of alchemy smithing, so his mana capacity is incomparable to a normal second-year student, and the result of this exam has already been decided. As he starts picking up his materials, Yunha starts naming them out, saying that they are materials with high mana content. Michael says they also are elemental materials imbued with water attribute mana. Inchul says that water attribute mana is sensitive to fire, making them difficult to smith. Michael says that's an issue of the past. Modern alchemy smithing is different from how it used to be. Inchul says that it is true that alchemy smithing is not bound by space or situation, but the smithing time varies greatly depending on the caster. Michael cuts him off, saying 30 minutes is all Hans needs to synthesize any ore. As Hans begins doing it, Inchul is surprised that he can achieve resonance synthesis in just 30 minutes. And then he says that if he's at a level where he can do that, he's well above second years, let alone entrance, and now he understands. Based on the materials, the topic of the exam, the time limit, it was purposely picked for Hans, somebody who excels at every one of these from the beginning. He realizes that Michael is just a snake. Sehun then says that he's found his materials, and as he holds them in his hands, Michael says they are the fire attribute versions of the materials that Hans picked. He says he doesn't know about his skills, but his pride sure is high. And Hans glances over, asking if he chose ores that contrast his on purpose, and he calls him stupid, saying that with the mana he possesses he could never wish to control the Crimson Firestone. He starts to smile, saying that this will be easier than he thought. Until he's surprised as we see Sehun's using his skill Bond Imprint. Specifically a function of it called Harmony. It allows the user to wear bond stones, and he can equip them on both his left and right arm. On the right arm he equips the flame-bearing iron that he got from Inchul. And as it starts to imbue into his hand, Hans gets annoyed, saying that he's using cheap tricks. Sehun continues to prepare his hands for the alchemy smithing as he's now making the materials float. Combining them into one, he starts smiling as everybody watches. Michael asks if he intends to make a resonance using the same attribute as the materials, and he calls him foolish as it is basic to resonate elemental minerals using only pure mana. And if it's forced like that, eventually it will go berserk. Even Hans thinks that he's going to cause an accident, and with this it will be Hans's win. But instead they're surprised as his arm starts to take on the shape of the flame-bearing iron, which has that wooden texture to it, but also that all of the materials start to resonate with one another. They are all locked in, speechless, and they see the ores creating a sheath for his blade. Sehun lets out a sigh of relief as now the flame-bearing iron has been unequipped, and his armament processing is now complete. The fire-accumulating sheath has been crafted to cover his blade from the previous test. Nobody can say a word as they're just stuck staring, and they can't believe that he actually succeeded in crafting his item already, and the grade is at rare. Hans is even surprised that he's done with synthesis that fast, and says that's impossible as the usual outcome is for the elemental mana to go berserk, and wonders if maybe he understood it wrong. But while he's distracted, his mana starts to go berserk, and he just stares at it surprised, and his dad yells, saying that if he imbues mana stones with elemental mana he knows what will happen as it starts to get out of control. It's soon followed by a massive explosion. A little later we see his ores shattered on the ground, and Hans looks embarrassed. Inchul says that normally after going through an evaluation one of the two would have become recommended as a candidate for the department valedictorian. But right now it's a pity because with Hans ending in a forfeit as he holds his bloody hand, it means that there's nothing they can do about it. Michael smiles, saying that since a student was injured during the exam it would be best to declare it as void, and announce a re-examination later. Inchul says they can't overturn an exam that's already taken place, and after all it was caused by Hans' carelessness. Michael says that it seems that Inchul cares more about the exam results than the student. And Michael says to begin with the fastest resident speed currently announced in academia is 5 minutes. However, a student who has just barely entered the school activated his mana, and achieved resonance even faster than that, and he asks them if it makes any sense. Sehun says alchemy smithing was originally a technique born to craft armaments using only mana in situations where normal smithing was impossible. Therefore, what alchemy smithing is about is not the traditional smithing method of killing the ore to fill it with the blacksmith's life, but about finding the roots of the mineral core, and unfolding the life of the ore itself. That is the essence of alchemy smithing. That is also what he just accomplished, and is the answer which the smithing academia will eventually uncover after countless trial and error. A simple method that will become the standard in a few years, so there's no real need to keep it a secret, but there's no need to teach it to a stiff old fuck who just barks without listening. Sehun tells him he doesn't know what he's talking about, and Michael calls him a fraud as there's no way a freshman would be able to create a rear-grade armament considering he has no background, and if he was going to cheat he should have kept it within the realm of possibility. Sehun gets pissed asking what he's saying, and then Yunha says that it does make no sense. Michael says that as expected she understands, and that they should disqualify him, but she completely walks past Michael, and heads over to his sheath, and grabs onto it, and she looks down at it saying it makes no sense. As she begins drooling, she points at Sehun saying that she wants one bite, rather just one lick would be good enough, and Michael and Inchal are just staring at her like she's batshit crazy. Her stomach starts to growl, and everybody realizes that she's talking about eating the weapon. Later that afternoon, while Sehun is walking downtown, he says as expected the fine-tuning is still immature, however since Michael was trembling with rage it was a pretty good sight. He then says come to think of it their last name rings a bell, but he doesn't remember. He starts to think about it, and then recalls Louise cursing that family name, telling him that when she was at Babel the armament she bought for a dirt cheap price after working blue-collar jobs suddenly exploded, and that's how she got mana burns, and ended up the way she was, and if it wasn't for that bastard she never would have had her life like this. Sehun then realizes that the name of the blacksmith who left Louise with lifelong injuries was actually Hans, and he can't believe the coincidence. His first goal in this life was to quickly make contact with the 3 dogs, and rehabilitate them, but there won't be a need for that with the explosive dog. He smiles saying that because if he stops Hans from acting up she won't go astray in the first place. Sometime later in the conference room of the academy people are yelling asking if the dean if she is really planning on making Sehun the valedictorian, and they say that she can't be serious, and this is a bit much. She asks if she is hearing them object, and they say rather than objecting it is closer to advice. Michael speaks up saying that after all it hasn't been long since she took office. She stares at him, and he says that they understand that the student's armament was impressive, but perhaps it would be better to review it more closely. Inchal asks if he is saying that because they haven't seen his sheath although it may lack refining craftsmanship if you consider the way mana was used in its compatibility with the 5-colored fireblade it's perfect. One of the professors says that it's surprising, but in all honesty he wonders to what extent it truly is as good as they say. Yunha says the armament is likely less than 60% of the completeness that Sehun originally intended, and that very deficiency is what makes it promising. Then she says that if even after seeing his valedictorian demonstration they cannot accept her decision then she will step down from her position as the dean entirely. It takes us to some time later, as a man is explaining that 54 years ago they have been sent down the Tower of Heroes for the sake of humanity's evolution. In response the underground unleashed the swamp of pandemonium which corrupts life, and while they gain new possibilities to pursue, a massive calamity was born simultaneously, and Babel too was born within that flow. The largest academy in history established in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Babel has produced countless heroes until now, and that everybody here will become one of them. The man speaking is named Ludwig Schubert, and he is called the Ascension Emperor. Ludwig tells them all that they are all people who have ascended here to Babel, and that is their duty as heroes. Schubert says that looking at him he seems to be a nice person, even though he is not exactly a purely good old man. Another announcer takes the stage, saying that next they will have the valedictorian demonstration for this year's top entrants. He asks all the cadets to come up to the stage. Sehun says he used to wonder why there were so many guys in his past life who acted so arrogant just because they did well in the academy. But as soon as he gets on the stage and everybody starts cheering for the demonstration, he says he thinks he understands it now. The announcer says the item to be used in this demonstration is none other than the golem produced by the Marionette Factory, and it is called the Automation Model No. 9. It possesses the performance capacity to spar with a C-rank hero. Sehun is interested by the fact that it is a combat-type automaton, and he says that since it has no particular armaments it might just use martial arts. The announcer says that first up is the combat department, and the valedictorian for this year is named Jake Myers. As he and the golem stand opposite one another, Sehun says that he remembers him being the third son of the Myers family, and that he is an oddball who uses martial arts despite coming from a family famous for their swordsmanship. And we see it's true because bro's not even using a weapon. As he and the golem get ready, the announcer says it's time to begin, and swings his hand down to start. The golem makes the first move as it dashes in to close the gap, and swings, but Jake sidesteps it, then goes for his head, but he dodges it. Even the next follow-up is pointless because he jumps backwards, to create distance between the two of them, and tells the golem it's his turn. As he runs at it now, he rears back his fist and hits it straight in the chest, but it blocks the attack. The students are surprised because even though the golem blocked, it still shatters some of its armors, as it gets sent flying throughout the crowd, and each one of his punches sound heavy. Sehun says that he definitely heard that he died young as an A rank in his mid-20s. But at the level he's seeing at the moment, he's somebody that Babel will only see once in a decade, so how did he only end up as an A rank in his past life? And he finds it very confusing. Jake readies the final attack, saying that with this it's the end as he punches the golem so hard that it shatters its torso, sending its head rolling into the air until it bounces on the floor. He says it's been a while since he last loosened up like this, and the announcer takes a second before saying that that was a pretty good demonstration, as he subdued an automaton with combat power equal to a C rank hero in a single breath, but they expected as much from the valedictorian of the combat class. Sehun says the next person up is going to feel some serious pressure. And that is the person from the support department, named Inu Erika. He realizes now that she doesn't need to worry about the pressure, as she's the eldest daughter of the Inu family, one of the 3 great families in Japan. She wasn't a summit climber, but she made a name for herself as an S-rank hero wielding a myth-grade armament. However, in the end she had been corrupted into a demon and was directly subjugated by her own family. And since she gets eroded into a demon in the future, getting close to her won't do him any good. She turns back and nods her head at him, and he's just confused wondering what's wrong with her as she walks onto the stage carrying a cage. "I'm a rapper." We see the automaton this time actually has armor, and his defense is 1.5 times that of the previous model. The announcer says he wonders what kind of performance this cadet will show them. She opens up the bird cage, and we see the bird's eyes glowing as one of hers does too, and she orders it to go forward. It flies out of the cage and soars into the air, screeching. Sehun wonders what's the deal with the crow. As it's now soaring above the automaton, we see it raise up its armor, and Sehun says that the automaton adopted a defensive stance, so it's going to be hard for it to pierce through that. She whispers something else as the crow's body starts to change shape, becoming heavily armored, just like the opponent it's facing currently. It then starts to dive down, cutting through the air. And as the automaton tries to block it, we see it pierce straight through its gap. Sehun is surprised as it put a hole straight through its chest, all with a single strike. It drops to its knees, and the crow flies back to Erika's hand. Everybody starts going crazy, saying that with a single strike, she's already ended it. And Sehun says with an atmosphere like this, he feels like he's just going to get booed off if he shows his armament in the end. But it's now his turn for his valedictorian demonstration. We see Ludwig watching, but bro's eyes are closed, and he says the level of the new department valedictorians this time are quite high. It's been a while since they've had a department valedictorian from the refining department, and the pressure might be too much for him. Turns out he's talking to Yunha, and she says there won't be any issues. The announcer asks if the crowd thinks he's going to show a performance better than Jake and Erika, as his heart is already racing with excitement. Sehun unsheathes his blade. As we see a window up here showing everybody both the grade of the weapon and sheath he made. They say that's quite unusual. For a freshman to craft a rare grade armament is amazing, but compared to the other departments, it lacks impact. Since they were all quite flashy, and his is not. Michael gets excited saying that the heavens are in his favor. And at this rate, Yunha's position will be his. The announcer says they're going to do number 10 for the model which possesses power equivalent to a D rank hero. Sehun turns saying no, he needs model number 8, and to equip it with armor just like the previous one. The announcer wonders what the fuck is wrong with this guy, since model 8 can withstand attacks from a B rank hero in some cases, and he's asking for it to be equipped with armor too. He tells Sehun that it's difficult to prepare that on such short notice. Because he doesn't want to ruin the demonstration, but Inchul says he prepared it in advance, and that he's equipped this one with armor for him. As it walks onto the stage, the announcer tries to tell him not to do this, but Sehun looks over at Inchul who's ready, telling him to go wild out there. The announcer is doing a double take, and then raises his hand into the air since he doesn't know what to do anymore, and he says that they can just let the match begin. The crowd starts to go wild. In-chul watches intently, as does Yoon-ha, and Se-hoon says that it's time for his demonstration since he's going to live up to their expectations. He starts to slightly unsheathe the blade, releasing a crazy flame aura, and he readies himself as it starts swirling around him. Jake starts pogging out of his gourd, saying that, "This is insane," but Han says that it's all flash, and no substance, asking what a guy who lacks mana can even do. Se-hoon says that the flames contained within the 5-color fire blade have the property of clashing with one another. This explosion could injure the user if it is not controlled with significant mana, but using the property of the fire accumulating sheath to store flames internally, and injecting crimson flames inside using the artisan of flame, he's able to perfectly control it the way he wants. Se-hoon says the storage is now complete, as the automaton puts up its barrier. Se-hoon swipes forward, calling it wildfire. He explains that wildfire detonates the mana compressed inside, and if he activates wildfire in this state, the forcibly compressed 5-color fire demons will explode all at once. Michael is speechless, as is the entire rest of the stadium, and even the announcer wonders what the hell he is doing, saying bro is crazy. The flames are now gone, and Se-hoon resheathes his blade, letting out a sigh, wondering if maybe he overdid it, as he completely destroyed the arena too. The announcer realizes he needs to say something, and says that the construction team need to get their ass over here immediately, but with this the midterm evaluation has ended. Yoon-ha walks down a hallway as Se-hoon is waiting in the room. She enters, saying that she's sorry for being late after calling him here, as she was helping clean up the arena. He says he should be the one apologizing, and he's sorry for causing that at the central auditorium, and he should have controlled it better. She asks what the hell he's saying, and he says that he thought she called him here to scold him. She says of course not. Her stomach starts to growl on cue, and he realizes that she just called him over because she's hungry. She clears her throat, saying she'll pay him 10 times the market price, asking if he would be willing to sell the 5-color blade, and the sheath to her. He's a little surprised by this sudden request. A status window appears, saying that a bond with Yoon-ha has been established. Se-hoon says before his regression, it was only established after he fed her weapons multiple times, but this is a good opportunity as he uses bond extraction on her. We see electricity floating around the room, and what he gets is called gluttony iron. The grade is high, and the quality is supreme. It is an iron that generates heat by consuming other iron. It corrodes the iron that touches, and melts the core into itself, and feeds on iron to create mineral blood. As he looks down at his hand, he sees it, saying that it's done. She asks if he's going to sell it or not, and he says no. She says that he just said it was done though. Then In-chul knocks on her door, saying that the academy head says he will proceed with the presentation ceremony immediately, and he wants to know if he can take Se-hoon with him. She says sure, and Se-hoon tells Yoon-ha that he'll see her later. Her stomach starts to growl as she stares at the door. They head to the heart of the academy, which is the Marduk mansion. As they're walking down the hallways, In-chul tells him to behave respectfully in front of the academy head. Not only did he generously handle the matter of him breaking the auditorium during the demonstration, but he is someone on a completely different level than them. Se-hoon tells him that he doesn't have to worry. As he enters, Ludwig says that he must be the new candidate. Se-hoon says before his regression, he was the hero who perished alone fighting the demon god of the extermination sky, one of the 6 great demon gods. But it was expected, because he was just that strong. Ludwig tells him that the armaments he showed at today's demonstration were all interesting, and he can't say there were no regrets, but he has high expectations. Se-hoon says he's prepared, but he feels like throwing the 5-colored fire blade, and the fire accumulating sheath into the furnace. Ludwig says therefore, as a tribute to his talent and effort, he'll give him 2 rewards, and he wants to know what he needs. Se-hoon says that he wants rewards that will increase his mana and memory capacity. Ludwig slowly swipes his hand up and down. As a lock gets undone, 2 items fall out of it. It is the heavy ink rock and the dream ivory. Both have hero grade. Se-hoon says that the heavy ink rock is rare, but the dream ivory is even harder to find. It'll be difficult to handle right now, but he has an idea of how to use it. Ludwig asks if he likes them, and Se-hoon nods, saying they're perfect. After Se-hoon leaves, we hear a voice asking what Ludwig thinks he was doing, as he's the only one receiving 2 rewards. Turns out it's the lock he opened earlier, and Ludwig says he simply gave them because he had the capacity to handle them. The lock says that they get the feeling he was like an old man, and Ludwig says that just means he has enough depth for it to even see him that way. But also, even he can't fathom that depth. Back in the classroom, the students are talking, and one of the students asks Hans where he wants to eat lunch, but Hans says that he has plans with Senior Howard today. The student is surprised, asking if he means the third-year department valedictorian. Hans says that it's just that their families are close, so they meet often, and he said he'd give him some advice on academy life, so they're going to go meet up. The student then says that he would like to tag along, but the door gets pushed open by Sehun, and everybody starts staring at him. The room gets really quiet, and he walks past Hans glaring at him, and Hans asks what the hell's the deal with those eyes. Sehun says at least it seems he's realized his place now, but Hans is just frustrated. Inchal then enters, telling everyone to sit down, and since everyone is here, it's time for some introductions as it's the first day of class. His assistant brings out a material called projection alloy. Inchal explains that it's dozens of times more sensitive to mana than common ones. As he picks it up, he says if you inject mana into the interior like this, it starts to change shape in real time. He says that an armament, envisioned in your head, is easily created. Sehun explains that he wasn't one of the world's top 100 artisans for nothing. However, he felt it during the Bondstone test, but this guy is the real deal. Inchal says because of the sensitivity, it is difficult to use as an armament, but it reflects unconscious traits allowing one to reflect upon themselves. That's why they call the armaments made from the projection alloy as alter egos. The refining department's self-introduction will be replaced by making these. It's scheduled to be exhibited in the main building for a week, so they can do their best. Sehun says that this much projection alloy would easily exceed 10 million won per piece, but as expected of Babel, even the introductions are grandiose. Students are making armaments left and right, even Hans, but Sehun doesn't look impressed at all. He says that there isn't anyone here with the most important talent. Inchal says that Sehun felt the final one, and when he looks down at it, he says that since he's already the valedictorian, there's no need to hide his power. Since he's doing it, it's time for him to go all out. As it starts to have a red aura, he glares down at it, and we hear a loud sound that shatters the windows of the building. Of course we don't get to see what happened yet as it's time for the display exhibition for the weapons, and we see some students saying that there's so many people here, and it must be because of Sehun. And it's funny how they talk about his level being different when he's just a freshman. As they're walking past all the weapons the students have made, one of them comes to a standstill, and the other dude says that is what he was talking about too. And we see that the ego weapon the Sehun made was actually 19 weapons in one. Although an anomaly occurred, it absorbed all 19 nearby projection alloys, and they judged that this in and of itself represents his aptitude, so they displayed it as is. The students say that it has to be a coincidence caused by a skill. They're probably just trying to push the valedictorian as a genius since it's been so long since they've had one. Of course Erica and Jake are there, and they both in disagreement with what the other students are saying. And it seems that the amount of projection alloys there wasn't enough to express his true potential in the first place. It takes us to a forge. As Sehun is hammering away, focused on his work, the other people are taken aback by how skilled he is. They're even going out of their way to time his strikes, and there's been a 0.01 second error so far. The assistant professor has no fucking clue what he's meant to teach him, and decides to skip him, asking if anyone else wants the demonstration. Eventually class gets dismissed. But Sehun is looking at some of the stuff he's crafted, and he's completely immersed in it. He tightens the grip on his hammer while looking down at them. He seems unsatisfied, and raises it into the air. And the assistant asks if he's really planning on breaking it. Sehun stops himself, and turns. The assistant says they have to deliver these after this week's smithing class, so he can't break them. Sehun asks what he means, and the assistant says that he needs to think about how they get their budget. They provide support based on the track record of weapons sold externally. He wants to know if he's dissatisfied with his body or his mana. Sehun says right now it's his body. To make training tools he needs to smith heavy ink rock, but he lacks the stamina to even attempt it. The assistant says that if it's necessary for smithing, buffs would be faster than physical training. Sehun is genuinely surprised because he never once thought about this since it was a method he avoided previously. Since he's returned to the past, and lacks stamina right now, he could just smith a heavy ink rock while under the effect of a buff. He thanks the assistant for the advice, and the assistant says it was nothing. Sehun then looks down at his blade, and tells him that he has some advice for him too. He noticed when he was forging that he uses too much mana. If he reduces it to 70% of what he's using now, and focuses the strike on a single point instead, that would be better than what he's doing now. The assistant asks if he really discarded advice from a freshman, but he's not the type to just ignore it. As he looks at the hammer he starts swinging away. Se-hoon explains that Babel encourages autonomous learning for each individual cadet. You can take classes from other departments, or take dozens of classes in a single semester. However, you must complete your major courses. If you accumulate 3 failing grades, you are immediately expelled. It is free will, but you have to have the responsibility for the choices you make. He heads to the Department of Sorcery, and as he gets off he bumps into Erica. She's surprised, and some of the students with her tell Se-hoon to not block the way. And Se-hoon just wonders what they're doing here in the first place, saying that they're the ones who should move. Erica stares at him while the other two are a little annoyed, and she asks where he's going. He says the Department of Sorcery. He was wondering if there was anything he could take as a minor class. Erica then says that she'll guide him, and the other dude with her says that there's a gathering after this, but she says they can go by themselves. He tries to tell her that the seniors want her to be there, and she says she's honestly just not interested. Se-hoon decides that it's none of his business, and starts to walk off with Erica following him. She asks what kind of minor he's looking for, and he says that he's wanting to learn about buffs. She asks what kind, and he says something that enhances physical abilities, and one that won't interfere with his smithing. She thinks about it, asking what he thinks about barrier arts. He says that he thought those are specialized in defense, but she tells him that it can vary depending on how you use it. As she pulls something out of her blazer, she throws it in front of him. As she casts some enchantment table shit on it, she hands it to him, telling him to tear it. When he does, nothing happens, and he says she must have increased the durability, but rather than that it maintains its original properties, but hardens when subjected to strong force. He says this suits smithing well since it requires delicate control. She says for complex applications like this he'll need a professor's help. He can't help but feel that this formula feels familiar. And she says that the barrier composition professor married into one of her family branches so she can introduce him if he wants. And she tells him in exchange something about the invitation he's holding, but instead he tells her that he gets that he understands it now, and he rips the letter right in front of her. She's surprised that he understood her family's barrier arts in that short time, and dismantled it. He says barrier arts definitely seem useful then, thanks her for the advice. He says that he's gonna go register for classes, and that she should probably just grab a meal with dudes who are following her. They quickly run over asking if she's okay, and she says that she's the one who gave him the invitation already though. He finally gets to the sorcery department. And people all around are wondering what Erica is doing with someone of another department. Someone else says that they saw them together yesterday too. Se-hoon says that false rumors are spreading quickly, and if Erica really had feelings for him, a bond would have been established. But he wonders if they pick and choose who takes the class, as he applied for it, but they told him to come take a test first. As they head into the forest, Erica explains this is the test site for barrier composition. He asks if this forest is really it. And we see up ahead there's more students. He asks if they're doing a treasure hunt for the test, and this looks annoying. He wonders if they hid something with a barrier. But when he walks forward he shatters exactly that, as there are 2 people surprised on the other side of it. They tell him that he passes the test, but he's just confused asking what they mean. We get a flashback on one of them who is the professor of barrier composition, the one who married into her family. His name is Robert Perry. He's asking if Erica's really interested in someone at the moment. It looks like one of those dudes following her, but not sure. He tells him to take a look, as he has a photo of her and Se-hoon together. He says that applicants have tripled thanks to her being out there, but he can't be too happy about it. There was also a request from the young master of the family. This year they're adding a test using the disorienting soul labyrinth. It is a barrier that distorts the senses to make one lose their way. It is a basic barrier, but if one is ignorant about sorcery, they wouldn't even be able to detect it. Yet he broke through the soul labyrinth on just his instinct alone. A little later we see all the people who passed the first test. One of the students asks if he can go first for the second test, since he thinks it's his chance to catch Erica's eye. Robert says very well, and the second test is simple. He needs to dismantle the active barrier before him using only mana. He'll grade him based on time, so to be quick and accurate. He starts to do so. We see it's a spider web-shaped barrier, where the spider is the core. Sensing the mana traveling along the web, the spider endlessly flees. As long as it exists, the web would infinitely regenerate. The kid realizes that to surround the entire spell according to the standard method, he doesn't have enough mana for that. And in that case, he's going to pressure it with speed. As he starts to do so, he finally manages to catch up to the spider, and it took him 2 minutes and 20 seconds. Robert tells him he needs to pay more attention to grasping the structure, but it wasn't bad. The student thanks him while looking back at Erica, wondering if she's head over heels, But of course she doesn't give a fuck. This continues as student after student is struggling with dismantling this, and Robert says they're all going to start in the basic class. Next is Erica's chance, and he tells her to give it a go. She's standing atop the spider web just like the other students. She senses where the weakest part of the web is, and instantly starts to dismantle, making light work of it. But they expected as much width from the valedictorian. It took her 22 seconds, and Ruber says it was fine, but the standard dismantling method would have likely been 2 seconds faster. She says she'll keep that in mind, and Robert says lastly will be Se-hoon. He doesn't look special at all, but they'll just have to find out how. Se-hoon walks over, and crouches on top of the spider web. The students are confused, asking if he doesn't know how it started. Se-hoon says the barrier has aspects that resemble heavy ink rock. The fact that if it doesn't reach a certain point, it repairs itself, and reverts. Therefore, to smith heavy ink rock, one must inject all stimulation simultaneously, matching the ratios. Robert wonders what he's doing, and tells Se-hoon to listen to him, but Erica says to leave him be. Robert decides to agree, and Se-hoon wonders what would happen if he can hold on to the accumulated stimulation in the heavy ink rock as he starts to test it with the barrier. As he sends his mana through a single one of the threads, it catches up with the spider, igniting it. The students are surprised, but Se-hoon says he's done, and with this, he now knows how to smith the heavy ink rock. As he walks away, Robert and the rest stare at him, and the assistant says it took 7 minutes, which is not that good, but Robert says the time it took was meaningless. It took 7 minutes now, but the next time he encounters the same barrier, he'll be able to destroy it in seconds. He didn't simply dismantle it, but he created a formula for dismantling the spell. Erica says that if sorcery is something added to his smithing skills, she's afraid of what kind of item he might create. But meanwhile, on the faculty side of the academy, we see an email getting sent out asking if any of the professors are free to supervise for Se-hoon as he is using hero-grade materials in his next craft. He wonders how many will come this time around, and instantly he is flooded with spam messages after spam messages. But not a single one of these professors are from Vice Dean Michael's side. Rumor has it that the atmosphere was bad because his son was pushed down to second place, and it must be true. The guy says he should start picking it out, and he is surprised. Because what he sees is that Yoonha herself will personally oversee Se-hoon's smithing. Later, when Se-hoon arrives at the smithy, she tells him it's been a while. He is confused, and says she must be busy, so why did she come all the way here? She says she came here to verify his skills. He says that since it's come to this he will have to work hard on making it. He explains that the first step for the heavy ink rock smithing begins with something called the dark curtain process. You place the heavy ink rock in a dark space without light, and separate the impurities from the heavy ink rock, which has spread like water using only mana. In this process the size of it will decrease, but its purity will increase. It's easy to say, but it's practically reconstructing matter. Yoonha watches, and is surprised. Se-hoon pulls out the rock, and he wonders if 1/4 is the best he can do. Because if he reduces it any further the performance won't be sufficient. Now it's time for the second step as he takes off one of his gloves. He starts to imbue it with aura, and flames begin to fly out from his hands as he begins controlling them. He says that he is flowing mana through crimson flames to filter out only the suitable fire. This stabilized flame is called flowing wildfire, and it possesses the property of maintaining the temperature from the moment it was formed. The third step is to continuously beat it while it's wrapped in the wildfire, and the key is not to rest until the distortion decreases due to the properties of the flowing wildfire itself. Yoonha says that even if he has immunity to fire, it's not like he doesn't feel pain. How much has he whittled himself away until now as he continues hammering, and it can even be heard outside as the sun sets. Yoonha is getting tired as she yawns. She is low-key falling asleep as it's been over 4 hours of smithing so far. As he tightens the grip on the hammer, sweat drips down his arm onto the heavy ink rock. He says the properties of the heavy ink rock, having absorbed the flame to its limits, are changing. Its distortion has now been stopped. He needs to melt the processed heavy ink rock, and pour it into the mold he prepared beforehand. Yoonha is surprised that he is doing casting, and not forging. Yoonha is wondering what he is thinking as he is slowly slowing down the changes in the heavy ink rock with a barrier dismantling formula, and constructing a mana circuit in that interval. As he does so, we see it take shape into a bracelet, and shatters the kiln. Now the armament ink spider bracelet has been created. He has acquired the skill Black Spirit Thread. He sighs now that his work is done. We see the grade is rare, and the quality is medium. It will absorb, and store the wearer's mana, and can use the skill Explosive Ring. He says it was a success, and Yoonha's stomach starts to rumble. He looks over at her, and she gets embarrassed holding onto it. He sighs, realizing she can't help it. She asks if this is a resonance phenomenon, as that is impressive. He says it is. Turns out he made multiple of the bracelets. He tells her it is not that strong, and if done right they might be able to aim for a set effect. He apologizes for not being able to give her an armament when she is going through trouble because of him, and he doesn't know if this will work as a palate cleanser, but she can have this at least. I don't know what he is handing her, but he watches as she starts to use her soul smelting furnace, which is the unique skill that allows her to eat stuff. She says it is pretty good, and it tastes like fried crumbs. He wonders if it has become a habit to make things to suit her taste, but it's not bad, because he can use it to raise the bond level. He says he is glad she liked it. She says of course it is a shame to eat this while right in front of those items. Then she asks when he plans to deal with the 5-color fire blade, and the fire accumulating sheath. He says that he doesn't intend to sell them. She asks if maybe it is because the price is low, but he says he is going to keep them in preparation for the subjugation class. But it's because there is a saying that hunger is the best spice, and once he has equipment worthy of giving her he will tell her first. She blushes a bit, saying that she will look forward to it, asking if the smithing is all done now. He says it is, and she says that they can leave, and let staff come and clean up. He says that he is glad that is a thing because he doesn't have the strength left to clean. As his body starts to feel incredibly weak he falls backwards, and she catches him asking if he is alright. He says that he guesses he slightly messed up in distributing his mana. She says she will take him to his dorm, and wonders if he has a fear of heights. He says that he doesn't, and she picks him up, telling him to get ready then. She opens the window, and puts her foot up on the windowsill before flying off of it. While she is surprised that she has this much power from the little scraps she just ate, he is more surprised by how different the situation is from when he regressed, as Erica is watching them fly off. She is still thinking about the invitation she gave him. Some time later, Sehun is browsing the forums for the academy. And he sees a post about how Erica was waiting outside of the refinery building for over 3 hours the other night. And some of the commenters are talking about how she's waiting for Sehun, and she's waited for him on other days too. Sehun wonders what's going on, but says that if it was something important they'll come find him again. A dude then enters the room, saying it's nice to meet them all, and he'll be in charge of the Understanding Tools class starting today. Holy shit, it's that buff Brazilian guy who dances. Rest in peace, King got isekai'd into this manhwa. Ricardo says that they should move to the training center, and the last one there owes him 20 laps around the track. All the students start to run, and Sehun sweats while the other students are complaining, talking about how it was meant to be a theory class. But he's definitely behind the rest, as when they get there, Ricardo tells him to go do 20 laps. He starts to do it, and people are talking about how his stamina is truly dogshit, and they wonder how he did the smithing properly the other day. Ricardo tells them what to lock in, as originally Understanding Tools was a theory class on the structure of armaments. However, due to the recent flame blade hunts, their methods have changed. We get a quick little TLDR on the flame blade hunts, and there are people who would target blacksmiths who craft hero grade or higher fire attribute blades. They're called the flame blade hunters. Sehun says even before his regression, it was an unsolved case. Ricardo says no matter what defenses they prepare, in the end, all that remains is their own body. Therefore, what they will be learning in this class is how to protect themselves. He tells them today they're going to be covering swords, and Sehun says he needs to be a bit careful this time. And to do that, he needs to raise his stamina first. He made it himself, but the performance is certainly effective. Because it turns out that that bracelet has more effects than what was originally listed. Because it manipulates gravity within a 1 meter radius around the user. Sehun says that his stats have all increased by an average of 5, and before the first year ends he'll make this body usable no matter what. Ricardo tells him to stop running, and come over here. Sehun uses the explosive ring ability to lower the weight of his body and feels refreshed. Or maybe he's making it heavier, hard to tell. Ricardo says that he's actually in better shape than he thought, and hands him a sword, saying that he wants to see if it suits him. Sehun says it'll be hard to move properly because of the ink spider bracelet. And while he knows some swordsmanship is not exactly refined, though he'll definitely give it a try. As he swings, Ricardo blocks it from behind the back. And the other students are making fun of him for being so slow, saying that he has to be exhausted from that run. But his form isn't that bad. Ricardo blocks it, saying that it's actually excellent. His sword knows the path it must take. However, it's too hasty. Sehun runs back in. Ricardo says that it would be better to address this before moving on. He stares into Sehun's eyes, and feels a chill run down his spine. And the sensation of his arm being cut off immediately follows. He starts to sweat profusely, and we see that Se-hoon has his blade directly to his throat. Ricardo can't believe that he just got scared of a cadet, to the point that he was hallucinating like that. He asks where he learned that swordsmanship, and Se-hoon just stares at him for a second, confused on why that shit actually worked, as it was a technique that apparently someone made in 10 minutes. In his previous life, some dude was saying that he'll pay him back next time, and people can be short on cash while living life, so what's the rush? And he says that instead of money, he'll teach him a technique. And that's how he learned this. Se-hoon plays it off, saying that he just watched videos of other battles. Ricardo asks if he's interested in learning swordsmanship properly. And if he wants, he'll write him a letter of recommendation for the body control lecture at the combat department. That afternoon, Se-hoon heads there, and he is surprised, because what he sees is the same dude who taught him the technique. And I think that's Jake trying to beg him to be taught something. He is a retired S-class hero, and it was a regular customer of his. His nickname is the Swordbreaker, but his name is Ma Guangsu. Se-hoon can't believe that the guy who was addicted to gambling and alcohol was actually a professor. Guangsu asks who he is, and Se-hoon introduces himself saying that he came here from recommendation through Ricardo. Guangsu's surprised by that. Jake tells him that he's the valedictorian of the refining department. Guangsu says no matter how he looks at it, he just seems so mediocre. And tells Jake that if he wants to learn from him that badly, then he needs to beat him, and he'll accept him. As they stand off from one another, Guangsu says that it's a single match. The one who lands the first hit wins, and he raises his hand telling them to begin. Jake charges in. Se-hoon starts to lean forward a bit, relaxing himself. Guangsu recognizes what he's doing, as he's maximizing the flexibility in his body by lowering the strength. But regardless, the standard counter is grappling, not striking. Jake stretches his hand out, and Guangsu says that this is why he hates hotshots. They focus on mind games before they even clash properly, and it's no fun. Se-hoon throws his blade into the air, and Jake closes the gap, surprising Se-hoon with how strong he is. But of course Se-hoon expected that he wasn't going to be stronger than him, and as he's falling backwards he uses an explosive ring. As it starts to charge up on the bracelet, we hear something get hit. As Se-hoon's head also hits the floor, we see his fist held up against Jake's face, and he's actually starting to bleed from the nose. And Se-hoon tells him that he was actually a bit faster. Jake goes to ask about the attack, but Guangsu tells them to get out. Jake's confused, and Guangsu says that he told him that he'd teach him if he won, and Se-hoon says that since he was beaten by him, he should be teaching him now. And to think that the combat valedictorian was beat by the refining valedictorian just sounds pathetic. Guangsu says that's true, and he supposes he should make this half-wit competent enough to earn his keep. Jake asks if that means that he'll train him, and Guangsu says that he'll set a time and send it to him. He just has to make sure to show up. Jake thanks him, and begins bowing, and Guangsu says that if he's done to get going, as he has something to discuss with Se-hoon alone. Guangsu then says that he wants to show him the sword technique that he used on Ricardo. Se-hoon says okay, and he starts to lean forward, and closes the gap just like he did with Ricardo, but his sword this time gets sent flying out of his hands. Guangsu says that it's a first sight kill. The concept is good, but the execution is crude, and he asks if he thinks that swordsmanship that becomes a weakness from the second time onwards is normal. And if someone taught this to others claiming it was good, he would have broken their limbs. Of course he doesn't know this, but he was the one who taught it. He then tells Se-hoon just to watch, as he will build a proper body onto that skeleton technique. Se-hoon asks if that means that he's enrolled in the class, and Guangsu says yes. Se-hoon says in that case he'll be going for today. After he leaves, Guangsu calls him stiff. Se-hoon says that he's acting all high and mighty when it's just after service. Jake runs over, and Se-hoon's just surprised that he didn't leave yet. But Jake says he wanted to give him something, and it's the same letter that Erica tried giving him. Jake explains that it's an invitation to noblesse. It's a place where cadets from prestigious families gather. Se-hoon recognizes it, and Jake says there are a lot of stuck-up jerks there, but it'd be a good opportunity for him. Se-hoon says that he doesn't know if he should just accept something like this. And Jake tells him that, thanks to him he got into the class, and he should at least show him some gratitude. Se-hoon thanks him. Se-hoon explains that the two classes he's applied for so far are barrier, composition, and body control. He wants to try and find a minor from the refinery side, but right now what comes to mind is curses, alchemy, or enchanting. He bumps into somebody, and goes to say excuse me until she grabs onto his wrist, and he looks down surprised. She's inspecting the bracelet. She asks if he made this. He asks her if there's a problem if he did. She says that she would really like to enchant it for him. His status window then instantly forms a bond with her, and we learn that her name is Leah Claudel. She is someone who raised an armaments grade by 2 whole ranks via enchanting, and she's a genius among geniuses who created a legendary armament. And she's supposed to have shattered the enchanter industry. They make their way to a cafe, and she starts screaming about the bracelet. She says that she just has a couple formulas, but it's low-key just her ranting to herself. And Sehun says that she's an absolute oddball asking if the armament is not good. She says that there's too much that she wants to do with it, and it's made of heavy ink rock, so why is the compatibility so good? And she can't decide what to insert because there's so many possibilities. He says that in that case then it should be fine. She asks what he means, and he says that there's more bracelets, but also there's a resonance phenomenon, so she should keep that in mind. She asks who he is, and he introduces himself. And she's surprised that he's a first year. She introduces herself as a third year in the enchantment department. Someone slams his hand on the table, interrupting them, telling Sehun to follow him for a moment because he has something to say. It's Erica's lackey, and Leah says that surely he can see them in the middle of a conversation. The dude says that he's just wanting to resolve this quietly, which is why he's asking for him to follow. Sehun tells him just to say it here, and the dude tells him to apologize to Lady Erica. He tore the invitation that she gave him right in front of everyone. He explains that Erica told him to tear it though, and the dude said sure he has a point, but it wouldn't have mattered if he didn't receive an invitation from Jake. Sehun asks if Erica sent him, and he says that he's acting on his own. Leah laughs a little bit, saying my ass, since everybody knows that he's just one of the young master servants. He starts to yell at her, and creates a barrier around them. He says that he might be under the delusion that he's someone special right now, but Babel is full of people far superior to him. Sehun asks if he's trying to say that he's better than him, which makes Erica's lackey get really pissed, and starts to summon these little shadow wolves straight towards them. Sehun raises his hand right as they get close, and catches a dagger out of the air, making the wolves disappear. He says that as he thought it wasn't just made of mana, and he asks if he used daggers to attack even if they're just illusions. The guy freezes up asking how he knew this, and Sehun twirls the dagger saying that he doesn't know, but right now it just sounds delicious. As he uses the gluttony iron from Yunha, and eats it, the dude starts screaming about how much money that dagger was. Sehun says with a taste like this, no wonder he's screaming. He then uses explosive ring to lighten his body, closing the gap in an instant, and hits him in the stomach. It shatters the dude's illusion as he drops to his knees. Sehun then asks Leah if there is a lecture in the enchantment department that she recommends. She's just surprised, but says that he should do ancient enchanting. There's also an amazing senior named Leah there. She out here self-glazing. A little later we see Erica's lackey walking into an alley. He says that he didn't think a freshman would have such reaction speed. Erica says that she'd like to take a look at his dagger. He's just surprised that she's there, and she stretches her hand out, and he gives what I guess is one of the extras to her. She tells him not to report this to her brother, as she'll speak to the family head separately. He says okay, but Erica says as expected of an armament used as a catalyst it has an anti-theft enchantment engraved onto it. She wonders if Sehun created a counter skill based on her, and Professor Robert's magic. She says that his aptitude for smithing is S grade or higher, but now his magic aptitude evaluation is definitely bumped up to an A from her. He also sees now that he has a bond formed with Erica, and he's confused as he's looking at some of the daggers. He wonders if she watched the fight with her subordinate, but he says that he'll get compensated properly at least, and it's crude to use as is, but he should be able to use them in combination with the black spirit thread. I guess he did just steal these all from that dude. He then heads to his lecture, and he's low-key falling asleep. He says that if he knew that he would just be hearing Inchul yap the entire time he wouldn't have come. Inchul says that the explanation seems sufficient, so he wants to start now. He says even if it's the exact same metal the form changes completely depending on how mana arrangement is modified. As he demonstrates it changing shape, he says the application of metal deformation is what determines the versatility of a weapon. That is why if you're a blacksmith you need to perfectly grasp the potential of the metal you're handling. Today they will practice using metal deformation using these iron ingots. First they need to manipulate the mana arrangement to create a scratch which is about 3 centimeters deep at the center of the ingot. The item has been adjusted to react sensitively to deformation, so they should handle it carefully. Sehun says that it seems he didn't completely reject magic smithing methods after all. Inchul tells them they have been using magic smithing methods for a long time. Inchul tells them they have 10 minutes, and they can begin now. The students are freaking out because they can't get it to change shape like Inchul did. Inchal sits there a little disappointed. But two people finish pretty quickly, and that is both Sehun and Hans. Hans thinks they're having some rivalry, but of course they aren't. Inchal tells them to move on to the next stage. He'll show them the arrangement as an example so they should try applying it. He shows them, and they both do it pretty quickly. Hans says he can win this time since they finished it in pretty similar speeds. Inchal then shows them the next arrangement. Sehun doesn't even start, but Hans does, saying this is his chance to beat him. He makes it take the shape Inchal showed, and Hans gets excited until Inchal doesn't congratulate him or anything. Instead he tells him to try returning it to its original form. Hans is just confused, but when he tries he realizes he can't because the mana arrangement is completely ruined. He says the iron ingot could not withstand the deformation just now, and that means the processing method was wrong from the start. Hans says he only followed what he showed him though, and Inchal says what he said earlier was that they must perfectly grasp the potential of the metal. If it's impossible to restore the manipulated arrangement, the equipment becomes deteriorated, and not deformed. It becomes a major variable in quality and performance, so they should revisit this part carefully in the future. Hans says he'll keep that in mind, but wonders if Sehun noticed that, and that's why he didn't do it. But he sees him change it into the shape that Inchal asked for, but also be able to change it back. The other students are surprised, wondering why it worked when Inchal said it wouldn't. Inchal then asks Sehun if he could show him that demonstration again, and Sehun says that it's only possible because it is an iron ingot adjusted for cadets, and if it was a standard one it wouldn't have been possible. Inchal says he sees, and it was possible because it was a sensitively adjusted ingot, but to think even he would miss that. We learn that there was once a summit climber, and the greatest blacksmith called the Saint of Holy Fire named Lee Kensa. He created it during his days as an S-rank hero, and it hasn't been disproven for decades since then. The deformation formula which is at the core of all blacksmiths. The truth of iron. Inchal wonders if maybe Sehun found another way, and starts to really think about it. As Sehun goes back to his seat he says that if he notices it this time too it would be the second time. A little later class is dismissed, and Inchal asks Sehun if he has a moment. As he wants to give him an admission gift because he helped him a lot by coming here, and we see it's the Crimson Fire Jade. Sehun goes to say something, but Inchal tells him that he needs to absorb the essence of it, and he can permanently strengthen his Crimson Flame. He prepared it because he heard that he could handle it. Sehun thanks him, saying it will definitely be a big help. Inchal also mentions the fact that he wanted to ask if he had any intention of taking the minor course that he teaches. Sehun asks if he's talking about the armament fundamental studies, and Inchal is surprised that he knows of it. Sehun says that he does because it's a class with one of the largest budgets supported by Babel. He wonders what to do because before his regression he's never even heard the name Inchal. So he knows that his ending probably wasn't good, but he's a professor receiving a lot of attention right now. Sehun tells him he'll take the course, and Inchal asks if that'll be okay because he knows he's applied to quite a few courses already. Sehun says that with this it's only going to be his fourth one. Of course Inchal still thinks that 4 is a lot, but says that he's looking forward to working with him. As they shake hands he extracts the bond from him again, getting another flame-bearing iron. Sehun says that if someone can extract metal from a person it means they can also forge and process a person's body. And when multiple attribute mana exist within a body it causes conflict. And since this is fatal for a blacksmith who requires precision, it has been established as the norm to only use one which best matches their aptitude. However, he's slightly different. The internal mana to block the heat is appropriately depleted, and the body drained of mana draws on the essence of the Crimson Flame. And he knows that what he must do as a blacksmith is to construct a mana circuit solely for the Crimson Flame inside his body. As he starts to do so we see it releasing a red aura, and he says that it's practically him smithing it within himself. A status window says that his attribute mana has been strengthened as it went from F rank to E+. He has also acquired the S-grade skill Spirit Body Smithing Magic. And all of his stats have increased a lot due to this. We get some type of flashback to a woman saying that he has the materials yet he gives up without even thinking of how to handle them. And surely he's not an idiot that's just going to accept that. Sehun says that's right, and he has to use everything he can, and whether he's against an ally or an enemy he won't have any regrets this time. The next day he heads to the forge, and the assistant says today they're gonna wrap up the items they've made during the last few classes. Since the finished products are scheduled to be supplied both within the school and externally, they could say that what they make today determines the flow of the entire first semester, so they need to give it their absolute best. While everybody's getting to work, Sehun's looking at his blade saying that it's a mess. His body isn't keeping up, so there are a lot of misaligned parts. This isn't the time to be taking it easy. As he starts getting straight back into work, making up for the mistakes he made previously while forging the blade. It looks unrecognizable now, and he says this should be pretty decent, and the rest will be difficult given the time. If he finished everything to a moderate standard he could get more budget, but as expected it's only right to make at least one thing properly. As he starts to sharpen the latest blade he made, and the sound of waves start to echo throughout his head. And if you remember, he said at the start whenever he heard the sound of what he figured out later was the end of the world, he would always create a good item. It's not a temporary sharpness, but an edge engraved into the body of the blade itself. And he calls the blade the white light. We see the white light longsword has been created, but he's also unlocked the white light style skill, and the grade for this weapon is rare, and the quality is high. He says considering he only used normal iron it's only decent, and his skills from before regression are returning albeit very slightly, but where he's at now is still something the other cadets can only dream of. As they look at their blades they feel disappointed. The next day, out on town, Leah is surprised to hear that Sehun wants to learn more about her enchanting. He says he was curious about her basic skills, and there are a lot of people here. She tells him not to worry as her workplace is more secluded, as they head out of the city into a remote farming area. He says this might be a little too far away, but she tells him that surely he didn't think he could see her enchanting that easily. They head to the hardware store, and she yells for her grandma saying that she's here. An older lady comes out saying that she's not deaf, asking if Sehun is her boyfriend or something. Leah says no, and he's the valedictorian of the refining department who entered this year. The grandma says that Babel is done for since they accepted such a soft-looking guy. She introduces herself as Helena, and Sehun introduces himself as well. Helena tells Leah to stop messing around, and get to work, as it has piled up a lot. She says sure, and Leah starts to guide Sehun to the workshop. She says that old woman has better skills than he thought, and he doesn't understand why she's running something like a hardware store in a place like this. Leah is looking at some cooking pots, saying that work really has piled up. She shows him the enchant palette, and explains that they are powders made by grinding magic stones. He says he knows the standard of the colors, but she handles them quite diversely. He asks if her job is restoring damaged enchantment formulas, and she says that's correct. She can earn money, and perform enchantments to her heart's content without worrying about the material cost. Seems like in this world enchanting is kind of like painting. She starts to repair the enchantment on the pot. Sehun says that he came because she seemed to be in a slump because apparently Erica's lackey was making fun of her calling her a has-been, and Sehun says as expected seeing it in person he thinks he knows the reason, and cause, but also the solution for her slump, but being able to immerse herself like that is also a talent. As he walks away whetstones catch his eye, and he says that this resonates with a mana arrangement to grant a special effect. He was itching to do something since he engraved white light for the first time in a while. Helena tells him to try using it, but that's only if he can, and he can pick anything from the pile. Sehun says it feels like she's bossing him around, and Sehun says that if he can use a special whetstone of that quality then he should definitely try it. He spots the kitchen knife, and grabs it, and she asks if he's really going to use that. He says why not seeing how the blade is worn evenly, and the axis isn't twisted, it looks like the knife of someone who knows how to handle a sword. And for this whetstone it's one with the most evenly compressed mana particles. If it's with this he should be able to handle it properly even if he sharpens the edge to its limit. As he starts sharpening the blade Helena's surprised that he's only a freshman. Leah then screams saying that she's done, but is more surprised asking her grandma what she's doing here. She says that he doesn't know either, and Leah says that she must have tried to find something wrong with her junior but realized that he's not the valedictorian for nothing. Helena hits her over the head telling her to shut up, and then asks Sehun if he's done yet. He touches the side of the blade saying this is the best he could do for now, but he'll do better next time. Helena then tells the both of them to get going, and Leah says that she's being cranky for no reason so they should just dip. After they leave Helena looks at the kitchen knife, and stares at it until a man enters asking if she's smithing again. She tells him to be quiet, and he says that he knows orders are backed up asking about the kitchen knife. She asks when the hell he's going to quit that restaurant, and she jokingly says a professor of the combat department shouldn't be cooking on the side. He tells her not to nag him about his hobby, and then goes over as it turns out it's his knife. When he picks it up he realizes something, and he asks if she drank, and sharpened this. She says it wasn't her. He asks if this is the work of those assistants she was close with recently, and their skills must have improved a lot. She tells him that it was a freshman who entered this year that actually sharpened the blade, and she wonders who exactly he is. On Sehun's way back, He asks Leah if Helena was really a former professor at the refining department. Leah says that it's true, and she retired 5 years ago, and opened the hardware store. Se-hoon asks if there was a reason behind it, and Leah says she's not sure. She doesn't think it was anything special. Since quite a few professors have left the refining department in the last few years. Se-hoon says considering it becomes the weakest department in Babel in the future, it's not a story he can just overlook. Leah then asks what he thinks about her enchantment, and he says the fundamentals were definitely flawless, and it was decent. She tells him that it was actually nothing, and he says that she's too narrow-minded. She thought of better methods, but didn't use them. She asks how he could possibly know. He says that if you don't know you can learn, but if you do know, and still can't do it then that's a problem. A creator's imagination itself is their weapon, and talent, yet she suppresses it. She says as if, and she's not doing this because she doesn't know that. He reaches into his blazer, and pulls out a dagger. He says that he has plans so he can't show for long, so she needs to pay attention. He tells her that if she were told to place a stone beneath the water surface, creating the stone, and putting it in is smithing, and carving the image of this emerged stone onto the surface of the water is enchanting. That is why enchanting takes on the nature of a dream. He uses the crimson flame on the knife, and pairs it with the white light style. She's stunned, and he says that it's not on the surface, but a reinforcement granted beneath the surface of the armament. If one layer isn't enough, she should divide the layers, and if she does this. As he throws the knife forward into a tree, it sticks effortlessly, but the following cut actually manages to cleave through a nearby shrub. He explains that the sharpness flows down along the current of the crimson flame. He can't call it a proper enchantment, but if it's Leah, geniuses like her tend to pave their way even while hesitating. She gets excited saying that she wants to borrow that, and she'll make sure to return it properly, and she starts begging him. He tells her that he doesn't mind, but if she's taking it to take this too. As he hands her more, she gets excited saying that she loves him, and then runs away. The status window appears saying that it's now extracting a bond from the target Leah, and the bond with her is level 1. He laughs saying that she sure is young. He heads back to Babel saying that he might finally get to meet one of the 3 dogs today. As there is a battle between the mad dog, and the demon god of extinguishing light in their youth. More importantly, he wants to know why Erica is here. She says that she's following him, and he asks if he told her to go away if she would. She says that she will, since she can just watch from a little further away, and he tells her it's time to go in. Of course he does this while extracting a bond from her, and we see that her bond is a high-grade stone, and Leah's is as well. It's now time for the martial arts hall's famous attraction, and it's called the ranking battle. The announcer says that she's the youngest professor of the martial arts department in charge of commentary today. Her name is Ran Fang. She says that she's going to introduce the players. First we have the 4th-year department valedictorian, and the next head of the Myers family, which consistently produces S-class heroes. The flawless superhuman who has been breaking records as the martial arts hall's rank 1. An active S-class hero, and their champion, and the sword saint who finally succeeded in climbing the tower of heroes up to its peak. Arya Myers. The first player of the day challenging the champion is South Korea's successor of the Flame Willember Spear. The Spear Art Department's 3rd-year valedictorian, the promising rank 10 of the Martial Arts Hall. Se-hoon says it's about time they finally meet as we see the mad dog Sung-ha for the first time in this life. And his martial arts sure do live up to the name of the Ember Spear. Every attack creates a flowing fire strike. But of course Arya's no joke either, she's effortlessly blocking them. Sung-ha looks strained as he tightens the grip on his spear. Arya smiles, and thrusts her blade forward, pressuring him in an instant. Now that she has him on the defensive, she continuously walks forward, and Se-hoon says even while considering his young age he's below standard. And maybe he didn't receive the support befitting a successor of the Flame Willember Spear. And there are more things that bother him, but the biggest problem is his weapon. As it's so ass he throws it away, and runs straight at her, but she puts her blade to his throat. He looks down at it, and tells her he lost. She tells him that was a good match, but with this it's over, and she's declared the winner. Rand says they will proceed with interviewing the 2 players. At least that should have been the plan, but Sung-ha had to leave early due to circumstances. Arya says fighting the rank 9 right after would be tough even for her, and it's time to fill up the empty time with some Q&A. As Sung-ha walks away, Se-hoon can tell he's upset. Erica asks why he's leaving without watching it all, and he says he's not really into this stuff. Also, he finds Arya obnoxious as fuck. But Erica is just relieved that he didn't come see her older brother, but wonders why he's so angry. Arya then calls him an interesting freshman, and says that she might have found one. We see Sung-ha outside of a building near the martial arts hall, and Se-hoon says that he looks alive, and well. Although his personality is a bit dog-like, he was a pillar of the death squad, and the guy who ultimately threw away his life to defeat the demon god of the Sea of Extinction. Since he hasn't become twisted yet, maybe he can obtain the bond stone more smoothly. As he approaches him, Sung-ha asks if he was watching the spar. Se-hoon says he was. And Sung-ha says the fact he found him means that he must be quite skilled. And he asks what the refining department's valedictorian is doing here. Se-hoon wonders why he's reacting this way, and says that he was hoping they could talk for a bit. Sung-ha turns, telling him to leave. Se-hoon says that this will be good for him too, but Sung-ha says he doesn't seem to know, so he'll only tell him once, as he hates weaklings. Like those who can't do anything on their own, and especially those who mistake their petty tricks for being on his level. So whatever he wants to yap about, he should just leave. Then he calls him a blacksmith, and that shit sounds like a slur twin. Se-hoon says compared to his mad dog days, he's actually being polite. And seeing that attitude, there's no chance of solving this with words. As he coats his hand in aura, Sung-ha can tell that he has no intention of backing down. And Se-hoon says that he wants to tell him one thing. The history of the flame will ember spear will end because of him. Sung-ha charges straight and pissed. Then raises his fist, punching straight towards Se-hoon's face. Se-hoon slowly raises his hand using the gluttony iron, and he blocks the attack. Even though it creates sparks. Sung-ha is surprised he blocked his punch, imbued with mana. And he says he guesses this is why he's the department valedictorian. And perhaps he did have the right to speak to him after all. But the trajectory of his mana ember still lingers. And this is the true power of the flame will ember spear. And with this he'll end it, as they charge back in at one another for another clash. The flames look like they fly towards Se-hoon. And Se-hoon uses them against him as it sends Sung-ha flying backwards. Once it settles for a second, Se-hoon exhales sharply. And Sung-ha is surprised as the ember that should only react to his mana is in his hands. And he starts to wonder if maybe he dismantled and stole it. Se-hoon dodges an attack, and realizes that this bastard is about to lose his shit because now he's releasing a purple aura. And he says the Flame Flower Gate massacre probably happened because of his personality. As Sung-ha closes the gap once more, he starts attacking, putting Se-hoon on the defensive. He says the effect of gluttony iron is almost over, and his body is at its limit too. Since making a bond with him peacefully is out of the question, he has no choice but to make him submit through force. We hear the sound of a massive attack hitting something, and we see Se-hoon actually caught Sung-ha's fist. Psych, it was Jake, had you in the first half. Sung-ha is confused, asking if he knows the refinement valedictorian. Jake says kind of. As Sung-ha pulls his fist back, he tells him to get going. Jake says understood, and quickly pushes Se-hoon away. Se-hoon though tells him to remember his words, and Jake tells him to stop being weird, and leave already. Sung-ha says he couldn't control himself, and threw a punch, and almost tarnished the reputation of the Flame Will Ember Spear, and caused trouble for his master. And now he has a better understanding of what Se-hoon's words really meant. Meanwhile, Jake asks what the hell he was thinking of, trying to pick a fight with that senior because if he didn't stop it he could have died. Se-hoon says no way, as he was just threatening him, but we see that a bond has been established. Next is for bond extraction. However, the one he knows is strictly the mad dog. If he's soft like he was just now, the effect of the bond stone might change too, and he'll have to think about how to raise his bond level as well. Thug, he says that Jake's pretty useful, and he asks him if he hurt his hand. Jake says that it's fine though, and points to it, saying that his shit's low-key tough. And Jake says more importantly, he asks what he said about his sister at the arena. Se-hoon says nothing much, just that she was stuck up. Jake says no wonder, she was asking him all sorts of things, as she's taken an interest in him. He asks how she heard that within a crowd of people, then says that her ears sure are sharp. Jake tells him to keep his voice down, as it's because his sister is an A-rank hero. He says that if it's just interest he'll actually welcome it. But Se-hoon thinks about it, saying that if he can get Arya's attention, who Sung-ha really wants to beat, his presence will naturally grow. Jake sighs, telling him it's not something to take lightly, as he doesn't know this, but his sister is actually not nice. Se-hoon says that he knows she's petty and insidious, and it scares Jake to the point his head flies off. He looks around, saying that he wouldn't go that far, and asks why he hates his sister so much. We get a flashback to her in his previous life looking at a sword, and she throws it away, saying that this one is also lackluster. She suddenly disappeared one day, and what appeared afterward was someone who had made the remains of a demon god her sword. She became the demon god of extinguishing light. I guess her lower half was consumed in the process. Se-hoon says her face just spells trouble. But he tells Jake that he's going to be leaving. Jake wonders what happened, and then gets a notification, and his sister says that it seems like he's made an interesting friend. And she wants to know more about him from now on. He then flinches at the next message as it says that his petty and insidious sister is asking for a favor. He can't believe that she's stalking him right now. The next morning at a lecture hall, Se-hoon wonders if he pushed himself too much with Sung-ha yesterday. And Hans mumble raps saying that the exchange meeting schedule will be set soon. The Monopoly dude wheels into the room saying that his name is Reese Dova. And he'll be in charge of their major classes for the next 2 weeks. He will also be teaching attribute refining. People recognize him as a professor that's known to be a lunatic. Reese says that before they begin he has something to distribute. These are the last results for their major refining assignment, and their budget for the first semester. And he tells them one by one to come up until he gets the final one, which is Se-hoon. Se-hoon stands up, and Hans, and the rest wonder how much he's going to get. Saying that's probably going to be a ton. Reese says that his budget actually has not been released yet. He asks if something's wrong, and Reese tells him it's because his completion level was so high it has been decided that it will be entered into the second year's public auction this Wednesday. They decided to set his budget based on the winning bid, so he should just wait a little. Se-hoon wonders if this is Michael's doing. But says that if it was a bad thing and Chul would have stepped in to stop it. He tells Reese that he understands. Reese says today they are covering residual mana. And luckily a cadet has volunteered to help with the class, and he tells them to come in. It's actually Sung-ha. And he introduces him as a third-year student from the Spear Arts department. The students are freaking out. Reese says that this is enough for introductions. They should make sure to grasp the basic concepts before they move to practice. He explains that in the creation of armaments the form of residual mana is largely divided into 2 types. The basic charging type, and the independent type which generates its own mana or absorbs it from the atmosphere. They both have their own pros and cons, but the independent type has a much higher difficulty. This is because the method of constructing a mana core is not standardized, and varies depending on the material's techniques, and the creator's mana. Therefore they will all start with the charging type first. Reese then tells him to demonstrate, and Sung-ha raises his hand. Reese explains that fire attribute mana is highly volatile, making it difficult to utilize as residual mana. However, if you can suppress the nature it demonstrates excellent retention. An example is the technique his assistant is displaying right now, the Flame Will Ember Spear. Hans is surprised, and so are some of the other students. For him to have that much control over fire attribute mana is crazy. Reese says that since they have such a good assistant they should make use of the opportunity, and they can submit their assignments by next Thursday. They can make whatever they want during this time, but they need to keep the theme. He tells them to quickly go to the refining room, and get ready to start building the main structure. The students jump up saying this is a chance. Even Hans does, saying that it's a golden opportunity to talk to Sung-ha. He goes to introduce himself, and Sung-ha tells him to get lost. Hans walks away defeated, and so do the other students. Sung-ha waits, and when he looks forward Se-hoon's leaving the room, and he calls out to him asking what he knows about him. Se-hoon says that he heard the proficiency of the Flame Will Ember Spear is determined by the number of flame wheels. He also knows that the current leader of the sect, Lee Won-ryong, is an A-rank hero who has reached 8 wheels. And since the 3 he had just now were created effortlessly, he could maintain 6 simultaneously if he did it properly. Sung-ha tells him to wait, and Se-hoon says that he knows he's reached the 7th wheel. Sung-ha looks surprised, and Se-hoon says he also knows that one day he couldn't maintain it anymore. Sung-ha is just confused since the only person he's told was the sect leader. Se-hoon says that he has a bit of a talent for handling fire, but he saw the flames he wields, and they felt strange. He can't properly detonate the remaining power, and it's as if he's letting it fly away. Sung-ha asks if he knows why, and Se-hoon says that he has a guess, but he doesn't feel the need to tell him. Sung-ha asks what he wants in return. Se-hoon says first he will pay a fair price for all of his advice and help. Second, he will consult him if a difficult decision arises. And he can tell him if he decides on it before they reach the refining room or not. Without any hesitation, Sung-ha says he'll do it, and that is only if he can show him proof. Later that afternoon in the smithing workshop, a bunch of students are wondering what Se-hoon is doing as he's crafting without even drawing a blueprint. Se-hoon explains to us that fire attribute ore and dark attribute ore have a ratio of 7:3. The other students are trying to tell him that if he throws them in recklessly all the attribute mana will dissipate. So what the fuck is he doing? Se-hoon says that heat is applied until the attribute mana begins to leak out. As soon as it does, he quickly takes off his glove and starts to control it with his own abilities, saying that simultaneously controlling the flame and mana to make it retain the attribute is called thermal substitution. Reese is surprised, saying that this was the reason that Inchul accepted the public auction submission. Se-hoon says to the eyes of other people it may look like an ordinary thermal substitution, but to Sung-ha a different scenery is visible, and he hopes that he's watching closely. As he starts pumping the fire more, Se-hoon explains that the fire attribute mana spreading outward is placed inside, and the dark attribute mana digging inward is placed outside. This way the balance of the two opposing manas is maintained, allowing a perfect circle to be drawn. Sung-ha wonders if this is it, saying that his second attribute, which was forbidden since it was considered a hindrance to the flame wheel ember spear, can actually be used now that he understands. Later he tells Se-hoon that he's dropped to the fifth wheel. Se-hoon's confused, and Sung-ha says he's managed to complete the black flame wheel, but he doesn't have enough strength for 6. Se-hoon says still 5 black flame wheels are stronger than 7 normal ones. Sung-ha says the flame flower gate periodically sends instructors to check the skills of the successors who are out in the world, and if one falls below the 6th wheel they are stripped of their successor position. Se-hoon tells him that if he just does it like he used to for this one time it should be fine, but Sung-ha says that's not going to work as his dark attribute mana can no longer be controlled. Se-hoon asks when that instructor is coming, and Sung-ha says tomorrow. Se-hoon says this shit is low-key irritating, and he starts to think about it since he only has a single day to fix this dude's issue. He puts his hand on his shoulder, asking if his successor position was protected, if he'd be able to do anything. Sung-ha says he can, and Se-hoon says that's good. Once he extracts the bond stone from him, he says that the first step will be to change his weapon. Sometime later they go to the private training room for the combat class, and Sung-ha says that only the top 100 rankers of the martial arts hall, or the top 30 of the department, can use it. Sung-ha says that he can change the skin here too, and he'll adjust it a bit. As it transforms into the flame flower gate, Se-hoon asks if he's homesick. Sung-ha says his master sent it to him, so he just uses it occasionally. Se-hoon says that he should start making the training tools now as he cracks the bond stone into half with his finger. He attaches it to both of the two spears, and gives it to Sung-ha. Sung-ha says that it's already awkward handling a single one, but now he has to deal with 2. Se-hoon says this is better for handling 2 mana attributes. He tells him from now on he needs to create a flame wheel with his left hand, and release dark attribute mana with his right hand. Sung-ha asks if there's anything else, or if he's really just releasing it. Se-hoon says that's all. Sung-ha exhales before he starts to do his best to try it. As he starts to, though, dark mana flows out from his left hand, and he asks Sung-ha what's going on. Se-hoon explains that it means he unconsciously let his dark attribute mana flow into his left hand. It's a natural phenomenon for multiple mana attributes to mix and come out, but for him it's holding him back. It's probably because he's only been suppressing the dark attribute mana all this time. So if he manages to get used to handling both at the same time, then reaching the 6th will should be quick. He also puts the ink bracelet on him as well. And Sung-ha says that he is quite a good item here. After 3 hours of training we see him doing way better than he was previously, and it looks like he's actually getting the hang of it. Se-hoon says he's adapting quickly, and it must be because it's a training method he's devised in the future, and he wants to see how great the past version of Sung-ha is. As Sung-ha is getting into it, Se-hoon is focusing on his breathing pattern, his muscle movement, how he shifts his center of gravity, while also making sure that the wavelength of mana is continuously circulating through his body, and releasing it at the tip of the spear. When Sung-ha snaps out of his trance, he asks Se-hoon what he's staring at. Se-hoon says that it's data collection, and he needs it to make the weapon he'll use. And he's making it to submit as an assignment this time, so he shouldn't get his hopes up too high. Sung-ha asks who would have expectations for a weapon made by a first year. Then Se-hoon asks if there's a reason he must maintain his successor position. Sung-ha hesitates for a second, and tells him that it's because his master wants him to become the sect leader, and as a disciple he shall follow his will. Se-hoon says that the one who took in Sung-ha, and adopted him as a son, and cared for him was the S-class hero, and the first sect leader of the Flameflower Gate. His name is Jin Hyun. He ended up losing his power, and retiring due to an injury, but as a master, and a father he must still exert absolute influence over him. He's starting to think about how to get his bond increased by using his father against him. Sung-ha then asks why he's helping him. Se-hoon thinks about it, saying it's because it exists in the great demon realms. Places are going to be swallowed up by the swamps upon pandemonium, and will be filled with demonic beasts. He intends to enter all those demonic realms, and to do that he needs people to protect him, and he needs materials to make the weapons to give to those people. If he's the next sect leader of the Flameflower Gate, his skills and financial situation should be pretty decent. Sung Ha calls him materialistic, and Se-hoon says of course they haven't known each other for so long, so why should he do volunteer work? Sung Ha asks if he's saying that if he receives help he has to pay the price for it. And he tells him to help him become the sect leader, and he will follow him into those 6 great demon realms. Se-hoon gets a flashback of him telling him that if he makes him a weapon he will kill the demon gods for him. Se-hoon laughs it off, saying that he's still so similar to this day. And he says surely he won't regret this. And even if he hates it he'll make him the sect leader, as he's starting to use bond imprint on Sung Ha's bond stone. It takes us to the next day, as it's time for the inspector to come by. As it takes us to the public training hall, a man greets the young master Sung Ha, and he is the 7th will instructor named Gang Hyano. Sung Ha asks Hyano who the men with him are. He says they are disciples selected by the sect leader. He told him to broaden their horizons through a sparring match between himself and the young master. And since he is the most outstanding person after the next sect leader. But Sung Ha cuts him off, saying the next sect leader has not been decided yet, and he should watch his tongue. Hyano says he's sorry, seems like he was momentarily confused, asking if he will proceed with the skill assessment. Sung Ha says no, and he wants to request for the 7th will promotion. Hyano says that he's surprised, saying that a fool who knew nothing but training dares to covet the sect leader's seat. And he recalls the sect leader saying that if he challenges the 7th will to deal with him decisively, whatever happens he'll smooth it over. Hyano says that from the 7th will onward sparring with an instructor is included, and he must think of Jin Hyun back at the main gate as it's still too early for him. Sung Ha says he talks way too much, and he must be afraid of getting his position stripped. Hyano gets pissed, telling his men to bring the spear immediately, as the 7th will promotion will be a domain sparring match. He says the rules are simple, it's a contest of strength where the one with the stronger flame will wins. The condition for promotion is victory, or a draw, and it's time for them to begin. Sung Ha pulls out both of his spears, and Hyano laughs, saying that dual spears is crude. But Sung Ha begins to release his black attribute mana as well as his normal flame mana. And Hyano says that such messy flames will not be recognized as a flame wheel, and surely he didn't forget what the sect leader said about suppressing his dark attribute mana. We see all 7 wheels, and Sung Ha says that we'll see about that when they clash. Hyano says he's going to regret it, and starts to display his 7 wheels, and sends the first attack straight towards Sung Ha. Sung Ha's aura meets it, and completely disintegrates it as a black attribute mana wolf forms, as it's ripping apart his flame wheel. Hyano can't believe what he's watching, and then his spear starts to crack before it shatters. Hyano drops to his knees, and Sung Ha asks if he still thinks that's crude, or not. After they run away, Se-hoon asks him what happens now. Sung Ha says once the promotion ceremony is held soon he will be recognized as an instructor, and the official successor. Se-hoon asks how he's going to become the sect leader, and Sung Ha tells him there's 2 conditions. First is reaching the 8th wheel, and the second is obtaining the consent of most of the instructors. Se-hoon says even if he reaches the 8th wheel, will he get their consent? Sung Ha says that he can obtain it through sparring, so there is no problem. However, it won't be a domain sparring match then, so it's not going to be as easy as today. Se-hoon says it won't take long then, and Sung Ha says he's making it sound easy. Se-hoon tells him he's only saying it because it really seems possible if he thinks about how today's fight went, and he should just worry about how he's gonna pay the price from now on. Sung Ha tells him to just mention what he needs for the payment, whether it's cash or materials, he'll provide it. Sung Ha then tells him there's something else he wants to commission. Se-hoon says that he's surprised, wondering what it is. Sung Ha says that his spears aren't bad, but he only borrowed an assignment to be submitted for class. And if he could create these in just a few hours, he wonders what kind of spear he could make if he put more time into it. And he tells Se-hoon to make him a better weapon in the future. We see his bond has increased to level 2, and now the relationship is more established. But this also means that the value of his bond stone will increase. Sometime later at the auction house we see it full of people, and the announcer thanks them all for waiting, saying they will begin the refining department's 2nd year regular auction. Se-hoon, and Erica, and Jake are all sitting there. And seeing as how they're all dressed up, he guesses the valedictorian title is pretty important. Chul and Michael are also on stage. Se-hoon says he's curious about Michael's scheme to take over the refining department. The announcer says the theme is Iron Swords. A total of 36 items have been submitted, and a special quality verification process has been added. This cloth is woven from the melted fur of the S-Class beast white tiger. It is soft, yet hard like metal, and possesses resistance to slashing attacks. And thanks to that, as the demonstrator swings a sword, it shatters the blade. The announcer says as they can see, to increase cutting power they can easily identify items that have sacrificed durability. And during this auction they will use the fur to get rid of dog shit items. The first sword is Cadet Joseph Blue's horn sword. Erica asks if he knows why they're doing this. And Sehun says many people only know the white tiger beast's body as being hard, but it's actually complex. The fur, hide, flesh, and bones all have different properties. Among them, the fur mimics the sharpness of the metal weapon it touches. So no matter how good the weapon is, it eats away at the durability. Erica says that makes it sound like the white light longsword is at a disadvantage, since swords that have increased cutting power usually have low durability. Sehun says exactly, it's a blatant setup targeting him, and Professor Inchal. But that's only true if he didn't make it properly. They finish selling an item, and the next one is Sehun's weapon. As the guy swings down onto the fur, he tightens his grip. But it doesn't matter because it flies out of his hand. Michael wonders what the fuck happened just now. Sehun stands up, asking if he can briefly explain. He says normally a sword focused on sharpness aura would easily break against the fur, but the white light longsword gathers mana scattered in the atmosphere, and condenses it on the blade like a very thin edge. Everybody asks what he's talking about because they can't sense mana no matter how hard they try. Sehun says it's normal that they can hardly feel it. The mana density isn't high enough to be called sword ki, but since it's too sharp to be mere light, it's expressed as sharpness aura. Erica wonders if the phenomenon just now is also because of that. He says exactly. When identical sharpness auras clash, they cause resonance rather than cancellation. Using this, he can do something interesting. As he pulls out Erica's bond stone, he crushes it in his hand, and begins to use her social link stone. And says that the irregularly fluctuating mana is being adjusted, and all he has to do is add a clear path to it. As he touches the tiger's fur to get it adjusted to it, he then uses it as a whetstone, as it starts to glow super brightly, and the rank raises to rare. He says as expected the edge wasn't properly set with a common whetstone, since he used it to sharpen it on the fur. He says it's a simple skill that strengthens the sharpness aura that has been added, and the rank has now risen from high grade to rare, and they can hopefully reflect this in the starting price. The announcer says that according to the manual it'll bump up from 1 million to 5 million won. An armament made by the top student of the department who's currently gathering attention, and on top of that the item rose in rank. This is new material research, so everybody starts trying to get it. Even Jake offers 200 million, but Erica ups him to 210. The announcer says that must be the highest offer, and starts to taunt Jake, who raises it again, but Erica continues pumping it. Sehun, whose bank account isn't full, says that this must be pocket change to these people until a woman enters the room saying that she wants 600 million for it. Of course we know who it is. And Jake says that he needs to get it no matter what, because it's what his sister wants. And Yoon-ha wonders if she bid too low. And she's a whale in terms of money standards, and they're more like shrimp. And now the white light longsword has been sold for 600 million. In-chul smiles, and Sehun can't believe that he just got so rich. Later he's looking at his bank deposit, and Yoon-ha asks if he's checked it. He says that it has definitely all been deposited now, but asks how she plans to use it. She says that if she has time she plans to go to a danger zone, but low-key it's a waste to use an item like this just for training. Sehun says that he would like to see how it is used, and if she hasn't decided on a destination yet, how about she heads to Yungwol Mountain. She says the place is chosen as the candidate for the first year's first subjugation practice. And Sehun says exactly, and he thought it would be helpful to visit in advance. She thinks about it, saying considering her position that's a bit much. And he says he'll make her any armament she wants as a return gift. She instantly folds, saying that they should do it next week, and he agrees. But it was actually just an excuse. The summit climber Jürgen Kruger, chairman of the UD Group, the #1 global corporation, and also the strongest necromancer, had an artifact that he lost after being attacked by a demon of pandemonium, and it's actually hidden within that very mountain. Later Jake is in front of his sister who's pissed, asking if he really couldn't get it in the end. He apologizes, and she says what's done is done, so they can think about what to do next. She asks if he is still in the same class as Sehun. And Jake says yes, as they both take Guang Su's class together. Arya tells him to look for a chance during that time and ask him, and if he resolves this well she'll speak to father about the succession ceremony again. And at this rate he'll soon be pushed out of the valedictorian spot, but he's surely already anticipating that to some extent. Then she reminds him that father said it was forbidden until graduation, but Jake cuts her off saying he understands, and whatever method he uses he'll get that sword from Sehun. His sister asks if it's okay for him to interrupt her, and he apologizes. As she tells him to bring it to her by any means necessary. She's just pissed off by what Sehun said whenever he left, and he's low-key getting on her nerves for ignoring her. If you've watched till the end, comment, Venator, to let me know. Huge shout out, and a special thanks to my Patreon and channel members. Subscribe for more videos like this, leave a like or a comment to help the channel out. Thanks for watching.